What's going on, everybody? Cheers. Happy Wednesday, and welcome to the With Her Two Hands podcast, where each week we celebrate women who build, fix, and make things with their own two hands. I am your host, Bogey. I am a master auto mechanic by trade, but this series is all about celebrating all women who do all sorts of different types of trades. If you look back over the weeks, we've met with construction workers and welders and airplane mechanics and painters and upholsterers, electricians and plumbers, you name it. If you do it with your own two hands, if it's a skilled trade, we want to hear from you. If you are a woman who works in the trades or know somebody who is a woman who works in the trades and would like to be featured in this podcast, reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. And really, this series is about shining a light on all of these incredible women. We make up a very small minority of the skilled trades, but there are tons of us and a huge diversity of experiences and stories and just incredible women. And they don't often get to have their stories heard. So this is all about celebrating them. So I thank you all for joining and tuning in week after week to meet these incredible women. It's a huge privilege that I get to do to meet all of these amazing women. And I thank you guys for coming along on the journey. This week, I am really excited about our guest. I have been trying to have her on as a guest for, over a year. We tried last year and I was on the road and a storm rolled through and it knocked out all the reception. And so we weren't able to do it. And it was so sad. And then she went off and got married and was too busy for me because she was doing so much more important things. And so now finally, we made our schedules work. So I'm really excited to have her join in just a little bit. But I do have to quickly thank our sponsor for tonight's episode. If you work in the trades, you know that having the right tools, the best continuing education, and a great list of contacts is absolutely crucial. So every year, Apex is my go-to event to check all of those boxes. You can discover all the latest and greatest in tools and parts and get some unparalleled networking at America's largest automotive aftermarket event, Apex 2023 in Las Vegas. That's this year, October 31st through November 2nd. Don't wait. The seats fill up fast. The hotels fill up fast. So don't wait and get registered today for your inside track to the automotive aftermarket. I'll have the link in the description down below. And with that, without further ado, I'm going to bring on tonight's guest, Miss Autumn Reine. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Our technology is working. This is so exciting. I'm so glad to be here.
I know. So fantastic. I am so thrilled. Our last attempt to do this was interesting.
We were just building up the suspense. That's
there you go. Exactly. I mean, really what it comes down to is you're on YouTube. I was not yet on YouTube, and I just needed to get up to your level is what needed to happen.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm glad it's working more smoothly for you.
Yes, absolutely. Oh my goodness. So tell the fine folks at home in a nutshell who you are, where you're from, what you do, and then we'll start diving into the details and the nitty gritty.
Yeah. So my name's Autumn Reine. I am from a tiny little town in Idaho, Kendrick, Idaho. I don't know if you've heard of it. Nope. There's 300 people maybe now.
Okay. That's where teeny.
That's where our garage is at, and that's where we're living now. But I grew up in Idaho. That's where I'm originally from. And I'm a welder fabricator. I've been a welder fabricator for over 10 years now. And I absolutely love it. Do it for work. I do it on the side as a hobby with my car and all of our projects. So
amazing. Now, have you always been in such a teeny tiny town? How are you finding enough work in such a small town? Is there really that much work?
So where I grew up, Coeur d'Alene, it was a small town. Okay. And now it's not a small town. So I've steadily been chasing the smaller towns.
Okay.
And then I found this one. So this one's really about the right size. And so I do have a longer commute to work. It is a little bit tougher if you don't work for yourself to find work in a smaller town. So I commute about 45 minutes a day to work.
Oh, wow.
But
now, are you working with a single company right now? I know you've done a ton of stuff, but you're not an independent contractor. You work for a company. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I work for a company. They do electrical power protection.
Okay.
So we're supporting manufacturing. We're doing all of their products. It's a big range of stuff,
Okay.
but I don't get to share a lot of that side.
Oh.
Everything that's on my profile is the hobby side.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it sounds like from some of the things that you've done, like working for NASA and the US government and like Rolls Royce, I think you said, like that's a lot of
Yes.
stuff that's like higher tier, probably lots of confidentiality agreements.
Yes. There's been some you leave your phone at the door. You can't even be listening to music or anything like that.
Wow. So how did you get there? Like how did this start? Because it's one thing to become a welder fabricator, especially as a woman, but these days for anybody to become a welder fabricator. But then it's a whole nother to be at the level of welding and fabricating that you're doing it in like the spaces that you're doing it. So how did this begin?
It was a very long, windy path to get here. I actually didn't want to be a welder when I was growing up.
Oh.
I wanted to be a veterinarian. And
Okay.
so
Your
life
dog
did
walks
not
in
go
on
that
cue.
route. I know, that's Lena. She's this way, yes. I wanted to be a veterinarian, and life didn't work out for me that way. We were a very low-income family growing up, and so I found myself right out of high school. Well, actually, not out of high school. I dropped out of high school so I could be working multiple jobs.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, gosh, how can I afford to live right now? If you want to go work somewhere with no college degree, minimum wage won't cover your bills.
No.
And so that was my struggle. And right around that time, the Coeur d'Alene brought in a technical school.
Okay.
And it was the first of its kind in our area. And I heard them like, well, they have a welding course and they have diesel mechanics. That's kind of cool. So I looked into it and they said, well, Autumn, you have to be going to high school to take these courses.
Oh.
And so I said, well, this is as close to college as I can get. And so I re-enrolled in high school. And so in a roundabout way, welding really got me right back on track. Nice. And I went from there. So everything that I've done in my career has been taught on the job or high school courses.
Wow.
I haven't got to do any college, at least for welding. I did get an opportunity to kind of go into like engineering, but that's sidetracking.
That's okay. That's incredible. What drew you to the welding what piqued your interest? The diesel, the welding, like what made you look at that and think this is something that not only interests me, but interests me enough that I'm willing to go back to high school and not be working the hustle of multiple jobs?
Yeah. So at the time, I had a 1970 Ford Highboy pickup. Wasn't running, of course, and I wanted to build a bumper and I wanted to get it running. And so they didn't have like a general automotive. They had a diesel, and so I said, well, I'll take the diesel course and then just add in the welding, just so I could build a bumper. And and so I enrolled in both, and actually ended up falling more in love with welding. And kind of when I looked into the welding career path, I'm like, gosh, there's so many places you can go. And that's kind of what my resume looks like. I'm like, well, I'll try this and I'll try this and I'll try this, because you aren't limited to one path or one type. There's so many different avenues you can take.
Yeah.
So
that's amazing. It's an incredible story. I had no idea that was the path and the background of how you got here. That's very interesting. I love it all because you wanted to build a bumper.
Yeah, build a bumper and pay the bills. And
right?
Yeah, it took me a few years to really fall in love with it. When I joined, it was a little tough because there wasn't a lot of women in it that I could see. One of the gals I looked up to was Jessie Combs. So not to date myself, but this was back 2013, around 2013, 2012. And she was one of the ones that I really looked up to.
Yeah,
and,
absolutely. She paved the way for a lot of people.
She did. She was the one that's like, yeah, I can do this. and I'm a strong, independent woman, and I'm rocking it. And so she was the role model.
I love it. Did you encounter any other women in school and on the workforce at all? Or was like Jessie really the only like example you had for a long time?
I did have one crazy friend that was my welding partner that came
Okay.
in and welded with me, and I think we did do some mechanics.
Nice.
And then from there, I think I've only worked with, now counting my current job, 3 women.
Wow.
In all the shops that I've been in. So one of the first shops I went to, I was the only woman. That was the one with the big water tanks. That was really where I learned the most of that's where really where I got my start. They gave me the chance to learn on the job. I told them, I said, I don't know what I'm doing yet. I was still in school actually when they hired me.
Oh, wow.
And so a lot of the guys were really respectful and helpful. A lot of big
That's
brothers awesome. and almost like adopted dads.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you were still in high school and doing these trade school classes. How long were the classes in high school? Was it like a year program or?
It was my last, I believe my last year of high school. And so I was taking my high school courses online, and the other half of the day was welding course or diesel mechanics.
Okay, interesting. And then you're looking for jobs while you're still in the program.
Yes.
How was that process? So like, was it easy to find a job? Like you obviously landed in a great place, but.
I'd say there's a lot of shops that'll hire you while you're in school, while you're learning and train. It's really hard to find a good shop that's willing to teach, that you can really move forward and grow with. And so I got really fortunate in my role. Actually, the gentleman that funded that technical school was the CEO of the company that hired me.
Nice.
I actually, he kind of gave me a second chance. I was struggling in school. I was struggling to make it to my welding courses because I was working multiple jobs to get through high school and to get to these courses. And he came in one day and he says, Autumn, why are you skipping my classes? And I didn't know who he was. He was in a suit and coming right into the welding shop. And I said, well, I was working. And he says, well, why don't you just work for me so you don't have to skip classes? And so he did. He brought me in as an apprentice because he had heard good things that I was learning, and applying myself when I showed up. It was just wasn't there.
That's incredible.
So, yes, it was definitely a blessing.
What an inspiring thing, and so like that's so huge for him to have like taken that, like paid attention, taken interest, and did something about it. That is, you don't hear about that every day, so that's really cool.
No, so that really gave me my start. And so right when I got out of school, I was still within this company, and really I got to learn a lot of things. I got to learn about being a part of a team, and this was large scale construction. We were moving these big 60,000 gallon capacity water tanks with 2 cranes across the shop. And so I was the youngest one. I was the only girl in the shop, and it was really fun.
You're the baby, you're the only girl, you're brand new, you're doing this ginormous stuff. What was that experience like for you? Was it super overwhelming? I mean, you wanted to just do bumpers.
And when I was in welding school, once I started to learn more about the welding, I'm like, okay, I can do more than bumpers. And so the dream was actually to do like the fancy TIG welding. And so at this point, I hadn't got to do any TIG welding yet. And so I'm like, well, I'll work with who's going to hire me and, get some background. And so I had a lot of fun actually with the really large scale builds. I just thought it was so cool. It was like big Tonka trucks.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was really fun. It was really dirty work. But that was kind of fun. You'd leave work and your face would be a whole different color, and get these big coveralls, and they only went down so small, and so they were huge on me, and
of course
have to roll up the bottoms. But no, that was probably one of my favorite welding experiences in the beginning.
That's amazing. Was that, so that was MIG, I take it then, if you hadn't gotten to doing
Yep.
TIG yet? Okay.
Yep, that was MIG. So I actually only got into TIG, about 5 years ago. So
Oh, wow. That gives me hope, because I have seen your welding. Your TIG welding is phenomenal. Anybody who has not seen like the picture flyer for
oh my
this
goodness.
episode, check it out. Check out her page and check out her welding. I am like in awe, and I have been TIG welding for like 2-ish years now, and it's not look anything like yours. But if you've only been doing it for 5 years, that gives me hope.
You got it. You got it.
Your welds are amazing.
It took me a lot of scrap metal, and I'm still making a lot of scrap metal. So,
so do you do mostly TIG now with the work that you do? Have you made it to the dream?
Yes, at least for the type of welding I do. I really love the automotive side, the custom, the one-off. I've done a lot of production welding and a lot of the MIG welding, and I'm like, well, it was really cool. Getting that repetition is really good for like dialing in the skills. But for now, I'm just like, I really just want to do something weird, do something crazy, and can we actually do this? And so I'd say that's more of my favorite now, and I'm doing more of the TIG and the specialty stuff now where I'm at.
Okay. Very cool. So where you're at now is no automotive, though. You're getting some of that in automotive at your job, and you're doing a lot of it in your own shop, right?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome.
But the TIG I had to learn to actually get this last job.
Did you take classes for it, or did you just teach on your own, or learn on your own, I should say?
So that's actually a funny story. At the job before this job, I had another, I'd say, call him a work grandpa. I've had a lot of those that take me under their wing, and that's really how I've learned everything that I've learned. It's somebody taking the time and saying, here, why don't you try this, or just
cool.
taking a few extra minutes to check in or offer suggestions. And so there was somebody at my previous job that knew I wanted to do TIG, and he's like, well, you're off the clock. Why don't I teach you? And so he did. So for the few weeks before my interview, he taught me TIG. And so I went into my interview, and I'm like, well, I've got a few weeks experience. I think I can stack something. And it went okay. They hired me. So
that's fantastic.
Trial by fire.
Right. I mean, hey, it's the way to do it. And how awesome that you've had so many people who have been willing mentors and willing teachers. I feel like that's not the norm. That's not what I hear commonly, but it seems like that has been the norm for you, and that's incredible.
Yeah, I think it's a tough one to navigate. At least, being a woman in a majority men's field, it's been important. I've kind of tried to focus on trying not to be a minority, if that makes sense. I don't want that to be the focus. I want just my work to speak for my work. I don't want it to be, oh, a girl welded that. It's like, no, that was welded, and it just happens to have my name on it. And so that's kind of, I know a lot of women this may resonate with, but I've almost learned in a lot of my positions, you have to work a little bit harder to be taken seriously. And so that's kind of been what my focus is. And so I think that really helps people step up to say, here, I'll help you. Let me help you get even further, because I can see the work that you're putting in, that you're trying.
No, that makes a lot of sense, because I'm glad you said it, because I was asked if you felt like it was something that you did that brought that on, that there were so many people willing to help. And I think you're absolutely right. Like when you show people that you're passionate, and you show people that you really want to learn, like there will be people who will step up, and at least at most places, not everywhere, but at most places, there will be at least one person who will step up and like see that and want to help encourage that.
And you're just there to work, and you're just there to learn. And I think sometimes it gets blurred, especially when, there haven't been a lot of women that have worked there before.
Yeah, or none. Right.
Yeah, I saw that a lot in the Ironworkers union. That was the Wild West for the shops that I've been in.
Interesting. I was gonna ask that, in all the different kind of environments that you've worked in, because you've done union, you've done large scale, you've done construction kind of stuff, and then you've done more design and more fine production stuff. Is there an area that you have found more accepting of women or less accepting of women, or like more challenging environments than others?
So corporate, which is, I would say, like where I'm at now is corporate. I'm at headquarters for a very large company. They have very strict policies for that. And so there's a lot more eyes on what's going on in the shop. And so there's nothing, nothing to worry about. But in other places like the union, that was when I really wanted to try traveling with my welding. When I was in school, that was when like the pipelines were really popular in North Dakota. And I'm like, I'm going to be a pipeline welder. That's what I want to do. I want my own pickup, and I'm going to go be a pipeline welder and just roll up and knock it out. Nice. So I didn't get to do that, but I'm like, well, union work is close. I'll travel and go from job to job. And so that was just something I wanted to try. And I really enjoyed it. It was like a really big family, but it was a bit like the Wild West of welding, at least from my experience. I had supervisors follow me back to where I was staying at night. You really just had to watch your back a lot, because there was a lot more people there, and from all over. They're contracted to certain jobs, and so there's less accountability, I guess, in that sense.
Interesting.
So, but I did love, a lot of the people I worked with. It was like a big family.
Yeah. So. Interesting. It sounds like there was kind of both sides to the coin in those situations. It was like the good, the bad, and the ugly. But did you ever have any situations where you were like afraid or in a bad situation? Were there people to look out for you, or how did you handle that
experience? When I was actually a supervisor that had, I was back. So when you're on the road, you're traveling like in an RV, in an RV campground. And so I was kind of out of the way. I didn't want to stay in like the big, I guess they were all crowded by the time I got out there. And so it was late at night, and I had brought my dog along, thankfully. And I think I was outside on the phone, and my supervisor walked up and was asking if he wanted my circuit board. My camper had gone out, and he asked if he could look at it. And I said, no, like, it's fine. I got it handled. I've got another one on order. And he was very pushy, trying to come into my camper, and my dog, who was not an aggressive dog at the time, just lost his mind.
Oh, wow.
Was lunging at the guy, and the guy just wasn't taking no for an answer. And so I was just really thankful in that moment that I had brought a dog with me, because I don't know how that would have gone. And so that was a really tough situation to be in. I think that was probably one of the scariest ones that I've been in this field.
Yeah.
But it's just being aware of things like that, bringing a dog, or just having certain things on you to just in case, depending on where you are.
Well, I'm sorry that you had that experience, and I'm also very grateful your dog was with you, and that's a really valuable tip, I feel like, for people to hear. Like even something as simple as having a dog with you could be the game changer. There was no other guys on the site that were like that noticed or saw.
No.
Or did anything. Wow. Interesting. No. Interesting. I've heard a couple of similar stories recently from women in like kind of the construction trades and kind of that similar traveling kind of environment. And it's as a mechanic, I've not had to deal with that particular type of scenario. And it sounds like you said, it is wild, wild west. That sounds not great.
Yeah. And it's just one of those, coming from working in shops, it's just not something I wouldn't think about. It's like, oh, I don't need to worry about this. But when you're out on the road, it's a totally different experience. So it's not that women can't succeed there. There's just things that you have to keep in mind and be aware of, and buddy systems and all of that. But
for me, I'm like,
I missed home. I did that job and I finished that contract. And I was like, I had 2 houses at that time. I had my camper and my house back at home and was never home. And so I'm like, I miss home. So learning experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Do you think you would, if it wasn't for that experience, you might have stayed longer, or is it really just like you also missed home and it wasn't the right fit for you?
I think it was kind of a combination of everything.
Yeah.
I think it was just something I wanted to try in my career while I could. I wanted I had the travel bug to go and go out in the Wild West. And but I think it was a combination. It wasn't the fit that I was thinking it might be. But it was something I had to try just to know.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about this industry is you can try all of these weird things to see if something sticks.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good attitude to have. And I'm glad you tried it regardless. So what was the next then? So you don't want to travel. You still you're craving TIG. But what is the next step in your journey and your development of your career?
So I guess what came after that, is that what you were asking, is what came after? Yeah. So kind of around that time, I was developing my metal art business.
Okay.
It was something I was doing for money on the side, some play money. And I had actually, I finished that job on the road. And I said, I've never had the chance to, I wanted to be a vet. Maybe I still want to be a vet. And so at this point in my life, I had a stable job, career. I actually had the means to explore those little girl dreams.
Yeah.
So I developed this metal art business so I could try out the veterinary. I was a veterinary assistant.
Oh, wow.
And got to work in an office, and I did my metal art at night on the side because veterinary assistants don't make very much money, unfortunately. But I got to see a whole different side of veterinary that I had never got to see. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I didn't have those welding skills to lean on to help fund that exploration. Right. And so I was like, well, maybe veterinary is not the best fit, what I thought it would be. I'm really glad I didn't do that when I was younger.
Interesting.
And so then I'm like, well, I'm really fascinated by engineers. So maybe I'll try some engineering college. And so I did. I started college for engineering and did about a year of intro to engineering, and did my metal art business on the side to help fund that.
Amazing.
And, so yeah, I got to explore all of these different avenues to see, what I liked, what I didn't like, to kind of figure out my path, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. That's an incredible and such a huge testament, I think, to the trades. I think the trades get such a bad rap overall, but like your story, regardless of the challenges, like you were struggling, you dropped out of high school, you were hustling, not feeling like there were any options or opportunities there. And then welding not only gives you a job, but gives you enough comfort and financial stability that you can have 2 houses, that you can still, take advantage of the opportunity to explore other career paths and education. I mean, that's like a phenomenal testament to the trades and to you and your drive and your hustle. So huge compliments on that. That's awesome.
It's been very cool. It's been a freedom to me, having found welding. I absolutely love it. There's just so many different places you can go and things you can explore with it. So
yeah, 100%. I feel like if I had been exposed to welding when I was younger, I probably would have become a welder. Like I didn't know about it. Like when I was in early high school, I never knew that was like a thing. I didn't know what welding was. I didn't know anything about that. Did you have aside from Jesse Combs, or was that your first exposure to welding when you were younger? Like was it exposed to you at all?
That was really my first exposure that I saw.
Wow.
Didn't really grow up working on cars or mechanics or anything like that. I had a lot of friends that were guys that were like big brothers, and we worked on cars and pickups and things. And so I saw a little bit there, and I'm like, well, I want to be able to do that on my own. And then I found Jesse, I'm like, well, I can do it on my own because she's doing it. So,
right. That's
yeah.
awesome. How did your
But now there's a
family raise
lot.
up? What's that? Sorry.
Now there's a lot. There's a
There
lot more
are.
women. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's really snowballed, I feel like, because when
Mhm.
I came up probably about 10 years or so before you, and there was like nobody that I saw anywhere ever, and now
Yep.
it's like slowly gaining speed and like becoming this bigger and bigger snowball. Is really cool to watch.
Yes. And I think Instagram's really helping that too, because I think there probably were, a fair amount of women welders, but just nobody knew about them.
Totally.
Women that have been doing this for their whole lives, but now we have like this almost like a LinkedIn site where
Yeah.
we can just share pictures of everything that we're doing. And that's what I love to use Instagram for, is networking with other professionals and learning and meeting people like you.
Yeah, no, ditto. I honestly, I hate social media for so many reasons, but I love it for that reason. Like, I love it for the fact that we can see each other, that we know that there are other women who exist that do what we do. I mean, I remember when I was in like, I must have been like early college years, and my mom clipped out a newspaper article about a female mechanic. And it was like the
Mhm.
first evidence that I had that women could do
Oh
this.
my
It was like,
goodness.
it was a newspaper article, right? So like, that they existed, but nobody
Yeah.
knew about them. We never saw it. Like, it
It's
just
not like you could
wasn't
just talk
possible.
to them and yeah.
Right. Right. Exactly. Like, I hung it
Send
on
them a
my wall for
DM.
forever. Yeah,
Aw.
exactly. So it's very cool. And now you get to be that person who's inspiring other women to start and get into this too, which is very cool. How was your family when you decided to follow this path? Were they supportive? Were they caught off guard? Were they like,
They loved it actually.
nice?
They thought it was really cool. I was kind of in a rough spot when I found welding, and so finding welding really gave me a direction. And yeah, it was really helpful, and so they loved it, and they've just really supported me along the way of, hey, I'm going to try this, and I'm going to try this, and I might do this, and I get a
Yeah.
lot of nudges from them, like, have you explored this yet? Have you explored this? So
Nice.
they're very supportive.
Very cool. Very cool. Okay, so back to your career journey. So we try veterinary, we decide no. We try engineering, we decide no, not really there.
I
Oh,
liked
mom.
I liked working with my hands too much. I think that was the problem. I'm like, okay, this is really cool. Like I like scribbling red lines on the drawings, but I don't I like getting to build the stuff. So I think that was where I got with it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Side note for people who are listening in the audio version, Mama just made a comment and said she could not be more proud of her daughter. So
Oh my goodness.
there you go. I love it. Okay, so no engineering, no veterinary school. So how did we get then to NASA and doing things for the government and like, because that's a big jump.
Mhm. So it actually just happened to be that the place that I was working for.
Okay.
When I went through my stint of college and doing my metal art, I landed on a shop that did contract work. So they didn't have like their own product line. They just
Okay.
picked up contracts from different people. And so all of a sudden next week we're working on Rolls Royce, or you never knew where it was coming. We did.
Oh,
This
interesting.
one isn't confidential, but we did like an infinity pool. Have you seen those where you like look off
Yeah.
the edge and it's just water?
Uh-huh.
I got to see like one of those get built and do welding on those, and so it was really
Fun.
cool. I think the shop dynamic wasn't a great fit, but I loved getting that variety. Was really cool.
Yeah, I can imagine that must be been fascinating seeing all sorts of different types of projects like that. And an interesting thing, because I mean, I hear about people doing independent contracting as welders where they are they're kind of constantly going to different places, but to work for a company that is a contractor is an interesting take on that. That must have been
Yes,
fascinating.
and I liked it. I can, if I were further in my career at that time, I could see maybe taking on some of those contracts myself, but being with a company that's looking for those contracts and finding those contracts and making sure that everything's ironed out and you just show up and weld or fabricate it is a lot easier.
Yeah, no, for sure. It takes a whole layer of stress off of it. But
Yes.
the environment wasn't so great, huh?
So in that position, I learned a little something of what I liked and didn't like at all of the places I've worked. And so
Sure.
I'm grateful for every place that I've gone to. I learn a different skill set, or I learned that, I don't like working 80-hour weeks. No matter how much I'm making, I don't want to work, all of this overtime. That's something that I don't like. I know there's guys that love it. So that was one of those shops. I also learned kind of supervisor that I like to work for. So if that says enough, but no, I learned a lot. I learned a lot there, and I was there, and then that was where I learned TIG welding. Okay. And so my time there was great.
That's awesome. And then was the next step where you're at now, or is there more steps in between?
So the next step is where I'm at now. But okay. over those previous employers, I was doing the metal art. And so the metal art was one that I really loved growing that. So I did that on the side with all of the companies that I've worked for now. Nice. And it started as just horseshoes. Mm-hmm. And that came from my mom. She said, you should try welding horseshoes. And I said, well, everyone welds horseshoes. Everyone does. She says, well, maybe, you don't know till you try. And, maybe Autumn's horseshoes are going to look different than somebody else's horseshoes. And so I did.
Mom.
I know, she's the sweetest. And so I did. I started making these silly horseshoes, and I'm sitting there laughing as I'm welding. I'm like, well, everybody does these. Why am I even doing this? And I ended up loving it. I started with the horseshoe art and branched into like metal roses, made metal rose bouquets, and I had stuff going all over the world at the end of it. And I got to travel to a bunch of rodeos. And so this was all while I was working full time. So this was like my little fun hobby. So I get to go on these little mini vacations to these big rodeos and set up my shop and have all of my metal art.
I love it.
And I had to put up a little sign that said it was welded by a girl, because everyone would come in and say, hey, your husband did a really good job.
Oh, geez. Nope, not my husband. Me.
My sister was with me, and she's like, I'm going to make a sign because I'm sick of answering this question for you.
Okay, so how did people react when you had the sign up?
They would look at the sign, they'd look at me, and they'd just, double take, like, you made this? And I'm like, yes, is it that hard? Girls can make stuff too.
Oh my gosh. You gotta love it. I love the like incredulousness that people have. Like, not all people, obviously. There's lots of amazingly wonderful, supportive people, but like both men and women sometimes are like, really? But what?
So that's where we've got some room to grow, I guess. We've come a long ways, but there's definitely room to grow where it could be like, oh, anybody could have welded this,
Yeah, absolutely. So. Yeah. I always like to say, like, the society is changing, but it has not changed. Like, we are in the process. Yes. So yes, we have a long way to go still. So do you still have your metal art business?
So I did my art for, until probably 3 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago. And then we got this garage. So I was working out of a little tiny, I think I had a single light bulb and a single outlet in this little tiny garage. And wow. I met my husband, and he walked in and he's like, this is not going to do. And so he brought in all of the LED light bars, and we ended up loving working together. He does engineering, actually. Okay. Which is kind of a rare combo for welders and engineers to actually get along. So
right, I was gonna say,
he's a good one. He didn't send me any of the bad designs. Just kidding, Nick. But no, we worked really, really well together, and we had some really fun projects. And then we found this garage. It's called the Kendrick Garage. It was built in 1915. Oh wow! And it was huge, and it was just this wild dream. It's like, well, what if we could get that? And we tried every avenue we could, and we ended up making it happen.
Oh, wow.
And so from there, it's like, well, now we have room for projects, for more projects, you know. So Nick has all of his projects in the, well, not his aren't in the back. They cycle, they move around. And then we did the Z here. We finished up the Z here.
Awesome.
And so no, the metal art has kind of been sidelined, but what I love about it is I could pick it up at any time.
Totally.
I set up an Etsy shop, and so you can just put vacation mode on your Etsy shop and then come back whenever.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I love it. So this Kendrick garage, was this like a vacant building that you just fell in love with? And
yes,
is
we had.
there a good story here?
Well, we have some friends that live down here, and we came down here for their Locust Blossom Festival. They have a little parade and vendors, and so we came down for that. And we were walking down Main Street where this garage is, and we were like, gosh, that's a really cool old building. And they're like, well, it's for sale. It's like, we couldn't do that. There's no way. And well, it's like, well, what would it hurt? You know, let's look into it. That's kind of my mentality. It's like, well, you don't know till you try.
Totally.
And so we just kept trying, and it ended up working. It had been not abandoned, but it had been in the Diabald family. They were the ones that owned it for, I think it's entire. No, I gotta think back. I want to say it's been in the Diabald family since 1915.
Wow.
And so they were still the ones that owned it, but it wasn't being used. It was more of like a storage. And so we reached out, we wrote them a letter, said who we were, what we did, and what we wanted to do with it. And they really picked us. So.
Oh, I love that. That's fantastic. And how long have you been there now?
I believe it's 2 years.
Okay.
2 years.
Very nice. And you're living there too. So you made a home and a shop out of one building?
No, we did not get that crazy with it. We thought about it. We actually were gluttons for punishment and bought a very old house in town. So now we have 2 very old buildings that we can share tools on.
Okay. So now you're rebuilding houses, you're rebuilding garages, and you're rebuilding cars, and still working a full-time job.
Yes. We like to work.
I love it.
We like to have all the projects, but no, Nick right now is working on a Humvee. Actually, he picked up his dream Humvee.
Okay.
We got the crazy car done. That's been the most recent big build that we did. And
the
that
crazy,
one did.
the crazy. Yes, that's the
crazy.
Is that what's behind you?
Yes.
Okay, so you have to tell us about the Z, because this is, I think, how a lot of people probably know you from following you along on your journey with this car on social media. So how did this car come about? Tell us the story.
Yes. So Z car has been my dream car since I was a teenager. I saw one somewhere and I'm like, I really like that. You know, it's like a Mustang, but not a Mustang because everyone has Mustangs. No offense to Mustangs, but
I'm with you on that.
And so when Nick and I first started, hanging out, getting to know each other, it came up, what's your favorite car? Mm-hmm. What's your dream car? And I'm like, hey, this is going to sound really weird, but a Z car. And he's just, you're kidding, right? No. And he's like, I really like Z cars. And he's like, I know where there's a Z car. And he did. He had gone to look at this car. I'm reversed. He had gone to go look at this car a year ago, and it had been sitting in a field for 27 years.
Oh,
and
wow.
Like, maybe she still has it. And so he messaged her, and she still had the car.
Nice.
And so those were some of our early dates. We're going to go pick up this car. Aww. Crazy. And ripping all of everything out because everything was just rotted. There was plants growing in the fenders. The engine was torn apart and had been for a very long time, so we couldn't salvage any of the original Z parts. But I tried to salvage what we could on the outside.
That's awesome. I love it. And you obviously did a lot of fabrication and you did a lot of welding on the car. I got to see some of your videos and posts about it. But you were doing a lot of mechanical work on it too. Were you just learning that as you went?
I was. Everything I've learned for mechanics has been off of Google.
Fair.
So I try to be a strong, independent woman, and I pulled a couple engines on my own,
Nice.
swapped a throwout bearing, stuff like that. Spark plug wires, got it. But as far as what the Z needed, I did not know that. That's where Nick stepped in. Nick grew up with mechanics, and that's what he knows. That's the way his brain works. So I got to learn a lot.
Nice.
On that. It was very cool.
That's it. It sounds like a good, you balanced each other out well on that then.
Yep, we made it through. That was the true test, if we can build a car together. So we
right. How long was the build process? Ish.
It's a true test there. So probably around 3 years, give or take.
Okay. All right. And you completed it and then got married because you figured you made it through that. You can make it through anything. All right. I love it.
And then it was fun. We got to drive the Z car away when we got married. So that was pretty fun.
You did a burnout in the Z at your wedding?
Yep. The rehearsal dinner, we're like, well, we might as well put some burnout marks on the floor. It was my parents' place, and they're like, we don't have a burnout yet. So they got
gosh. I love it. That's fantastic. So is there a new project that you guys are going to be taking on now? You've got the Humvee. Are you going to be involved in that one?
Yes, as much as I can. The Humvee is the next project, but I think currently we are having to kind of, I guess, steer towards the house to try to get the house more situated.
That might be important.
Yeah. It needs some love. It's a 1889, so it's been around for a while. But we're still tinkering down here, and need a break from the house stuff. So
yeah, absolutely. So now you're going to get into construction and carpentry, and are you guys be doing all the work yourself on the house too?
As much as we can, yes.
I love it. I love your attitude of I'll try anything, I'll tackle anything, I'll take on anything. This is a weird question, and it's kind of a difficult one to answer, but like, where do you think that came from in you? Like, were you always that kid? Did you come out with that attitude, or did you learn that as you got older?
I think it was just the, not wanting to rely on somebody else to do it for me. If there was something, I can kind of thank my parents for that. If there was something I wanted to do or something I wanted to try, then what do I need to do it? What tools do I need? What do I need to learn? What do I not have to get this done? And so it was really instilled in me from a young age. And then in my teenage years, I was more on my own, and there was things that I needed, things I wanted to do. So it's like, okay, what steps do you need to do to get there? It's not going to get handed to you most of the time. So,
right. That's awesome. Kudos to parents for instilling that in you and for you taking that on. I mean, you've got an incredible attitude, and it doesn't sound like anything has intimidated you or held you back at all.
There's lots of intimidation. But
I was gonna say, like, have there ever been situations where you've been like where it's been harder to have that and to just dive in? And how do you get yourself past that when that happens?
Oh gosh, I'd say all the time. If it's something I've never done before, there's that second where you're like, I don't even know where to start. And, I don't know any of it. What do I do? I've never done this. I have so much, I want to get here. I'm like way over here. How do I even start? And so I've kind of learned just to break it down. It's like, hey, let's eat this elephant, one bite at a time. And so it's really just breaking it down as simple as you need to go. And that's really helped me a lot, to not get overwhelmed and just to, well, what can you learn? And, learn as much as you can and get as much as you can on your own. And then, okay, well, then where can you turn? Who can you reach out to? Is there somebody online that might know? Is there YouTube, EDU that will tell you, stuff like that. Yeah. So
that's awesome. Very good advice. So that brings us into the next question, of course, is what made you decide that you wanted to not just do this build with the Z, but to document it and turn it into a YouTube thing? And because that's a whole nother skill set. That's a whole nother thing.
That was a huge undertaking, but it was really fun. That was something Nick and I, in the very beginning, were like, gosh, maybe it'd be fun to get, make a scrapbook or something. And Nick's like, well, what if we do videos? And I'm like, I don't know the first thing about videos or editing or anything like that. But sure, yeah, let's try it. And, so the mindset in the beginning is like, well, it's just for us. It's really just so we can have something to look back on, all of our goofy, funny, look what you did, look what I did, just to look back. And then it just kind of grew from there. I had a lot of software crash and burn trying the free stuff, and that didn't work well. So definitely learned a lot of things the hard way. And I still struggle, and there's a lot of YouTubers that are a lot better about this than me. I just like to do the thing. I like to build and be active in the build. And so sitting down and doing the editing part of it is really, really tough. So sorry to those that are following that probably know this. But
I feel it. I feel your pain.
Yeah, we've gotten out the majority of this build, and and so that was eye-opening for us too. It's like, we could do this full time, but we know, how much goes into the other side of it. And so that was really important to learn and to see before just jumping in and saying, yeah, we'll do all of this full time.
Yeah. So. Is there an interest in doing that? Is like the YouTube thing something that you want to pursue, or was that just kind of a side thing that is really like secondary to the passion of doing the work and doing the builds?
I think it kind of came secondary to loving what we were doing and just wanting to network and share. I think we are still going to do YouTubes. We are still going to share on social media because that's just how we network. And but I'm not sure we're going to do it on like the full blown full-time content creators. If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does, because it can be a full-time career, or it can be a secondary to something that you're doing. And I think it's sometimes they get mixed up in people's perception. Like, I'm sure you've gotten this often where people ask, like, how do I get to do what you do? And it's like, well, which part of it? Because there are lots of different pieces.
Yeah, and you don't really see everything that goes into it. The editing, you'll be up so late at night trying to make it. And I've heard, just from the other creators out there, it's like, oh yeah, I was up till 3 last night editing on the road, just so I had an episode out so I can go do another. Like on Raceweek, there's people that are putting out videos as they go. Yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh, I did that, and there's no way.
I am in that boat. I envy and admire like your consistency with getting out videos, because I'm the worst about it. I'm like, I'm just too busy doing the thing, and I hate editing.
You just want to do it.
Yes.
So I think my favorite is probably the pictures. That's where, like, Instagram, I do love that, because that's just quick. I can just drop a picture and say, this is what's going on, or has anybody tried this? Because I don't know what I'm doing here.
Right.
And,
Yeah. I love too that, like, the fact that you documented it, and it was your first build, and it was how you dated and courted and eventually married your husband. Like, it's this, it's so cool, because it's such like a document, not just of your build, but of your life now, which is just
definitely
so awesome.
It's a huge part of that. Yes.
Yeah. It's beautiful. I love it.
And it was really cool on Raceweek. That was another true test. Because we had done this build and stretched out over 2 locations over 3 years, and we really changed everything on the car. All of the suspension, all of the drivetrain, all of the important parts had been modified. And so for a reliable car, from that standpoint, there was a lot of ways that it could have gone wrong. And so from the very beginning, when we got the car, it was, we want to do Rocky Mountain Raceweek. That looks so cool. The odds of us doing it, probably not, but that's the goal. Okay. And so that we finally, once we got the garage, we're like, let's just do this. And so that was the true test, I think, for all of it, for like how we worked together, how we got the car built, how our visions, I guess, worked out. So that was a lot of fun.
Very cool. And it was successful, smooth. You got there, you went through the week without any issues, or no?
It was honestly, it was a miracle. We lost an alternator, and we lost an alternator right as we were pulling up to the only O'Reilly's in the Rocky Mountains. Like we were like about to go over 10,000 feet.
Okay.
And there was this little tiny town and it had an O'Reilly's. And right before we got to the O'Reilly's, we started to see that our alternator was failing.
Oh my goodness.
And so that was the only part that we lost.
Wow.
The entire time. And so it did it. And we're like, oh my goodness, how is this even happening? But we're just going to keep rolling with it. And I had never drag raced before. So that was, that was terrifying for me in a good way. But it was a lot of new things and it was a really fun experience.
That's awesome. Is there more drag racing in your future? Did you enjoy it? Did you get the bug?
I did. It was really fun. We had to tighten up our steering a little bit, but yeah, no, Nick had done some. I had never done some, so it was really cool getting that experience.
That's awesome. How did it do? What kind of times did it do?
We got into the 12s.
Okay.
I didn't think we were going to get that low, but we got into the 12s because it's the 6-speed.
Okay.
And that was the hardest part, was just drag racing a manual car. I drive manual all the time, but launching a manual and launching it smoothly, that was really, really tough. And so we really leaned on a lot of our good friends that were at Raceweek to help us out. And awesome. Yeah, I did a really big happy dance. Like the in-cab footage of me getting a 12 was ridiculous. But
well, you hadn't built that car necessarily to be like a race car, had you?
It's honestly, we built it to go get ice cream, like date nights, and maybe do a little drag racing. Like it's not on it.
And maybe do a little drag racing.
Only when we're in Mexico, not anywhere local. But
amazing. I love it. That's very impressive. Congratulations. All the way around. You know, from the outside, it's easy to say like your life looks like it's been like somebody's been smiling on you from above. You've had great mentors. You've had all these great opportunities that, but you've created this. You've created such a beautiful life for yourself, and you did it from scratch. And just huge acknowledgement to you and your hard work and your attitude and your willingness to try and do and dive in. Like you've done good. Your family, your mom is obviously very proud, as she should be. You've done good.
That's very sweet. Thank you, Bogey. Especially coming from you. Oh my goodness. I've been fangirling for Bogey for a long time.
Oh gosh. I'm not worthy.
Oh my gosh. Now I'm waiting for Bogey TIG welds.
Oh my God. I am not very good. I can make metal stick together, but it is not pretty. It's getting better, but maybe I need to come out and visit you in Idaho and you can give me some tips.
Either you come visit me, I'll come visit you. We'll make it happen. I will help.
Deal. I'm gonna hold you to that. Awesome. I just took a peek at the time and we are getting real close to the end of our hour. So I want to be respectful of your time and everybody else's, and I don't want to hold you too much longer. But I do have a couple of final questions. I guess one most importantly, and you've answered quite a bit of this, but throughout just your story in general. But I'm curious if you had the opportunity to talk to the younger you, little baby Autumn, and give her some advice. What are your words of wisdom to her or another little girl like her out there?
Gosh, that's a tough one. If I could go back, I'd be like, I would probably tell myself that I was not crazy for going into welding, that it's going to be the best thing I ever did. And, because if I hadn't, I don't know where I would have ended up. It was wonderful. To never stop learning. You really hold yourself back when you stop learning. Be learning for your whole life. And so just to never stop learning and keep moving forward, trying new things, getting scared. I've learned getting scared is usually a good thing. I don't know. There's a good scared, I should say. being a little intimidated when you're trying new things is good. That's how you grow.
Yeah.
So.
Amen to that. Fantastic advice all the way around, and a great note for us to end on. Why don't you tell the fun folks at home where they can find you, where they can follow along on your adventures and see your cool builds and all of the craziness you've been up to?
Yeah. So most of my stuff is on Instagram on Autumn Reine, not spelled like rain, Raine. And then we also have our YouTube, Wrench and Chill. And so that's where we'll have videos. They aren't going to be every day or of any regular posting, but they are a surprise. So we have a lot of cool videos on there though that you can sort through.
I love that. That's awesome. And I will have links to all of that in the description below. You've had a ton of great support in the comments. So when you have time after this is over, go back and look through the comments because it's worth getting that love and seeing how many folks have come out for you to support you and love you. Thank you so very much for finding time, making time to hang out with me and spend this hour with me. Congratulations on all your successes. And I'm excited to continue to watch as your story continues to unfold and you do more incredibly amazing things. And I am going to come visit you and that
would be so cool.
Teach me how to weld like you do.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, my pleasure. It has been an absolute joy. And folks at home, thank you guys so very much for hanging out with us as well. I hope you enjoyed meeting Autumn as much as I did. She really is just an incredible woman. Make sure you go follow her and go show her some support and some love and check out all the cool stuff that she is up to. For now, I'm going to bid you guys a good night. Big final thank you to our sponsor for tonight's episode, Apex. If you are not already planning on going to Apex, the Automotive Aftermarket Parts Expo, you definitely want to make sure you get that on your calendar. I'm going to be there. You should be there. It's the place to be for education, for tools, for all of the latest and greatest in knowledge, and the networking. Oh my gosh, so much good networking, so many amazing people to meet. It is the same time as SEMA, so if you're going to SEMA anyway, you should make sure you go to Apex. Make sure that that's part of your plans for this November. For now, I'm going to say good night. Be good to yourselves. Be good to one another. Come back next week. We have another amazing woman to introduce you to, and of course, a new archive episode every Monday night. And listen wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in. Have a good night, guys. Bye.